Hey there, Function Well community. Darren here. Just to give you a quick recap on our Function Well On Demand seminar this morning. So, wanted to share this information with you because hopefully you find it beneficial to achieve your health and performance goals, not just through this shutdown period, but good opportunity to invest in your knowledge because knowledge is power, and I hope it sticks with you for essentially the rest of your life. So, what we spoke about was we're designed to move. Okay, so where does that come from? Sorry. So if we wind back the clock to our caveman days, the caveman had to haul heavy mammoths home from the kill. They had to chop down trees. There was plenty of physical activity, which they were dependent upon. Now, whilst our survival these days is a lot less dependent on our physical prowess, our physiology, our DNA remains the same. Without movement, we are not the same. We're not the same physically or mentally. You know, all sorts of mental and physical health issues become present without movement. So I think more so now than ever, whilst we're going through this chaotic period, movement truly is medicine. So, and you know, that's millions of evolution with a strong dependence on this physical activity is so important. We're not designed to be stuck over a desk for 8+ hours a day. So this is evidenced by the research. So if we were to put fitness on a continuum, on one end is sickness and disease, and on the other end is fitness. The more fit one is, the less sick he or she is, and that's mentally and physically. So, and that's based upon the research on the more fit you are, the less chances you have of all these lifestyle-related diseases like cardiovascular disease, obesity, osteoporosis, type 2 diabetes, the list goes on. Now, it's one we spoke about in the seminars. Often, a lot of people's motivation to get started with exercise is through vanity, okay? So, want fat loss. Now, it'd be remiss of me in a movement seminar if I didn't touch on fat loss, but essentially, when you want to get fat loss or improve your body composition, we've got to look at the methods that are going to have the greatest impact on our resting metabolic rate. So what does that mean? That means your RMR means how many calories a day your body burns at rest without you having to do a thing, all right? And hands down, scientifically proven, what has the greatest impact on our resting metabolic rate is strength training. Now, it just so happens that strength training is probably the most important form of training you can do. Definitely you can do. Doing resistance training, lifting things, is going to dramatically improve your health and longevity. It is how much strength and muscle you have is a better predictor for longevity than any other biomarker. Now, we don't want big useless slabs of muscle. We want good functional sort of muscle, but everyone should lift weights, and weights is going to make you a more efficient fat burning machine, and it's going to make you live longer with a better quality of life. So in the online seminar, we go through that into a great detail for those that are on Function Well On Demand, but I'll just quickly expand on that. If we look at every kilo of muscle requires 50 to 100 calories a day to function, right? So, or burns, 50 to 100 calories a day. The research shows after the age of 20, we can lose, without load-bearing activity, 2 to 3 kilos of muscle every single decade. So by the time you get to 40, that's potentially 600 calories a day your body was burning without you having to do a simple thing, right? So that's a prime example of the importance of muscle. Now, the good thing is, obviously, you can reverse that and keep getting stronger well into our senior years by lifting weights and doing some sort of load-bearing strength training. Another component we talk about is our yin and yang philosophy here at Function Well. So basing that on the ancient Chinese philosophy of yin and yang, yin is the oil and yang is the fire. In order to have the fire, the intensity, the motivation, just in life in general, you need to replenish that fire with the yin, the oil. So we look at happy, sad, up, down, hot, cold, inside, outside. You can't have one without the other to appreciate it. They're all called dyads. With our training, it is exactly the same. So obviously we have this holistic approach on yin and yang, but relating that just to movement today, our training, when you can look at it as our yin is energy giving, our yang is energy out. Okay, so we can look at that as the yang, the intensity, yin is restorative. So the harder you train and the more consistently hard you train consistently often, the more you need to replenish that with the oil. And we look at breath work, mindfulness practices, mobility, yoga, massage, steam rooms, infrared saunas, ice baths. All these components are all part of this ability to regenerate and restore balance. Cool. Now, just to expand on that point, if we look at cortisol, so cortisol is our stress hormone, it's a low-grade adrenaline, it's our fight or flight response. So as I touched on one of our previous seminars, there's no good or bad hormones. Cortisol isn't evil. You know, we want cortisol, but unfortunately our bodies don't know the difference between physical or an emotional stress. So especially in times like now where we can be in a constant elevated cortisol state. Now, excessive cortisol is not good or healthy, so it can lead to excessive weight gain in the midsection, particularly. It can lead to chronic inflammation and has a catabolic effect. So catabolic means muscle breakdown. So how I explain, cortisol is an energy zapping, skin wrinkling, muscle destroying, fat storing hormone if it isn't managed. Now, if you have a cortisol profile, the worst thing you can be doing is doing excessively long cardio, okay? Because that produces cortisol for excessive amounts of time. And that's not what we want generally, but also if you have a cortisol profile, meaning you're in a stress sort of state. So the best form of, now all training produces cortisol, but the beauty of anabolic and these more anaerobic high intensity sort of efforts also produces more of the androgen, so like testosterone growth hormone, which can offset the negative impacts of cortisol. So if you are stressed and cortisol profile, you want to be, and everyone should be getting some yoga into their life and working on mobility. So when we look at fitness, there's 10 physical skills that make up fitness. Now, often we only look at cardiovascular endurance and strength. They're 2 physical skills, but we have things like balance, coordination, stamina, power, agility, speed, all these different components, and a big one of that is flexibility. Now, I often say to people that flexibility is often the limiting factor from people achieving their health and performance goals. And you might think, how is stretching more going to help me? So getting some yoga into your life, if you've got poor mobility, you're highly stressed, will be instrumental in reducing cortisol, but it's going to improve your mobility. Now, if we relate that just to purely body composition goal, if you have poor mobility and you can't get full range in a squat, for example, you're shortcutting your opportunity to get the maximum amount of muscle recruitment. The more muscle recruitment you get, the more of a metabolic disturbance and the more of a hormonal response you're going to get that's advantageous to improving your body composition, meaning burning more fat, being a more effective fat burning machine, and putting on lean muscle. So that's just one example of improving your mobility. To take that a step further, if you have poor mobility, you are likely to create faulty movement patterns and injuries will become present. It's not a matter of, it may take days, it may take weeks, it may take years, but you are going to get injured if you have poor mobility because you're going to create what we call faulty movement patterns. Now, faulty movement patterns are going to essentially take you in a position that's not biomechanically efficient, or the way your body's designed to move, and putting load on unnecessary joints or discs in your spine or whatever it may be. So yoga or mobility is so important, and unfortunately this desk-bound world that we're all in these days is wreaking havoc on our biomechanics and our overall health, but in particular our mobility. So again, if your faulty movement patterns due to mobility will create poor technique in the gym and in everyday life. and that'll start leading to, we look at injuries as leading, so the approach is lagging indicators. So often we start to look at treating the injuries once they become present rather than being in tune with our bodies and looking at leading indicators. So leading indicators are things like pain, joint soreness, tightness, poor technique and biomechanics. Because if you've got knee pain, shoulder pain, hip pain, lower back pain, that's not normal. That's your body telling you that something needs to be addressed. Now, so we want to be proactive rather than reactive, and taking time to mobilize, do good thorough warm-ups, looking to regenerate and restore balance. For the further we dig at the hole with training and life, the more we need to fill that hole with regeneration or restorative protocols. So now on the mobility, and you're creating these faulty movement patterns, as I said, it's going to lead to likely to poor technique, okay, and that's going to be counterproductive ultimately to your goals. But our first rep wants to be as good as our last rep. So we're neurologically wired for repetition. So if you do more reps that are shitty, you're going to do more reps that are shitty. So you want to take your time and look to invest in a coach to teach you how to move correctly in the gym, all right, and everyday life. Essentially, that's what that leads to. Because how well you can move with neutral spine, regardless of how many reps or the load, is what sets you up for a healthy body. The quality of the movement over quantity should always be the focus, because any deviation in neutral spine is going to reduce your chances of outputting force and increase your risk of injury. Okay, now a lot of this content that I've gone through is in one of I was fortunate enough to do Kelly Starrett's mobility certification in Colorado many years ago, but you can buy his book, and in our Restoration Zone we have the Ready State, which is his program, but you can access his book, The Supple Leopard, which is an incredible book. I strongly recommend you look at reading that one. That's a quick snapshot of today's movement seminar, but what I'm going to do in this mail out, you'll see is a link to our another essentially 16-minute seminar, which I go into the science behind our programming for our group classes, and it's taking a look behind the whiteboard. Now, I think this is really important at the moment, because we're seeing a lot of I suppose what you could deem, before I continue, all movement is beneficial, don't get me wrong, but seeing some things that are probably not going to elicit any real metabolic response or any return on your exercise time, just for the sake of trying to get creative with doing a movement, all right? This will help you understand what is a functional movement. And what we want to be aware of, guys, is balancing our movements across the week. We don't want to do excessive amounts of volume of the same movements, because you're going to lead to injury. And obviously we're limited with what we can do with equipment and whatever else, with gyms being closed. But this will give you an insight into our programming when the gym's open, and what I'm doing with our Function Well On Demand program across the week to keep everyone injury-free and achieve incredible results and help you function well. So encourage you to watch that next one. I hope you got some snippets of information with that recap on our movement seminar, and any questions, feel free to get in touch, and take care and stay well. We just cannot wait to see you all back in the gym very soon.